As they say in hockey, let's do that hockey.
Play a full 60 minutes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep it simple.
Get pucks deep, bring the puck deep, put pucks in deep. We got to keep it simple and just get pucks going forward.
Getting into the forecheck.
We got to keep playing aggressive.
Trying to take away their time and space.
We're focused on tonight. We just got to stick to our game.
Hockey is back, baby. We've got prospect camps, NHL hockey on TV, and training camp about to begin as we are back with episode 39 on the Fifth Liners Hockey Podcast. Owen Gund here with me, Casey Ditzel, Mike Maniscalco from the Carolina Hurricanes joining us as we hit our Metropolitan Preview halfway through the NHL here on our division previews. We've got the East Coast to go. And Owen, before we get to hockey, catch us up on what's been happening up north. You're now well into Vermont, and I hear we're going to have to start calling you middle name Bucci Gras with some chicken parm coming your way.
Oh, there's a lot of good stuff, Casey, but it's I did have, and I've been launching this whole chicken parm review thing. I've been starting to put Instagram story highlights in there. My family's been encouraging me to just sort of lean into it and give the people what they want, which is chicken parm content. And I have found the best chicken parm in Burlington, Vermont. I'd had it once when I was a senior BU, like going up there to call a game, and I'd just been recommended to it. But I think it was so cold up here that my face was like basically frozen. And when I tried it, I didn't like fully appreciate it. So this time having it, just had it at the bar. The people were lovely. They were hyping up the chicken parm. And I mean, there wasn't a doubt that I was going to order it, but it ended up getting a 9.3 out of 10. A grade, definitely in the top 5 chicken parms I've ever had in my life. I have the breakdown on my story highlight, but long story short, just the ingredients, everything, like you can't be above a 9 unless you have really good sauce. So that was good. The pasta, fresh made rigatoni. I got that in place of spaghetti because when you're eating it with spaghetti, there's a lot going on there. So like it's just easier to do rigatoni or penne. I obviously I've thought about this a lot, as you can probably tell, but just it's an all-around good parm, local mozzarella and basil, and yeah, it is in the top 5. But I'm gonna consolidate the rankings. We are gonna play in 8 different states this year, so a parm for every road trip stop is in order. Actually, and well, Clarkson has a good rivalry with St. Lawrence. We are going up there, so we are going to. We've got a spot pick. I've got a spot picked out there already.
Where is it?
From it's called Sergi's. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You gotta go to Potsdam Sergi's though.
Oh, so there's more than one. Okay.
There's 2. There's one in Potsdam, one in Canton.
That's so that's I got tipped off that one by the voice of the BU Terriers, Bernie Corbett. He told me about that one because he was calling like BU versus St. Lawrence games when they were the last time they played against each other was in the late 90s. But he said that he was going there with the coach at the time at St. Lawrence when he was calling was Joe Marsh, and I guess he became friends with him, and they go to Sergi's and but they're there at like 3 a.m. like when Bernie gets in, they all get in. And they woke up Joe Marsh. He woke up the owners at 3 a.m. And the owners came down, cooked them meatballs, cooked them some Italian at 3 in the morning. So Bernie Corbett's been hyping up this spot, Sergi's. I got to try it, the whole spread. But yeah, I don't think they'll be cooking for me at 3 a.m. But I'll have to get in there at a reasonable hour.
So Sergi's is kind of a local legend in Potsdam and Canton in the area. So the Sergi family is split between Potsdam and Canton. So it's kind of the 2 sides of the family that own the 2. And it's not quite the same anymore. Now they close up at 9 o'clock since COVID with some staffing shortages. They've changed it up, but it used to be like literally all night. You'd go out to the bars from the stories I've heard, and the bars close at 2 a.m., go right across the street and rip apart some pizza rolls at Sergi's from 2 to 3 a.m. And they had these, I think it was called like the big bag or biggie bag, and they'd hand out these pizza rolls in bags there. But so the I'm sure the parm is pretty good. If you're there for a couple days and you try the parm on one day, you got to get the pizza roll. It's like a challenge to finish this thing. They're monsters, and like taking one down in one sitting is a complete challenge. So there's a story that my boss tells all the time about Mikey LaSala is a good friend of mine. He's in the Potsdam Sergi family, and maybe someday I'll bring you to a place called the Shop to go after hours that their family resides in. But um, they were they were at Sergi's, and it was during a Clarkson summer camp where the kids used to come and stay in the dorms for the week, and they bring back all the NHL guys. So Craig Conroy, the Flames general manager now, before he was the general manager, Eric Cole, Craig Laughlin, I think, and a couple of the other like big Clarkson alumni names are there for this camp. And Mikey LaSala is another, like, he's one of the Sergis, just like, knows everybody in town, local legend. And I guess he was saying that he could skate. I think it was he could skate faster than them. He's also the assistant coach of the Potsdam men's hockey team. He could outskate them. So the story set is something along the lines of they go up to Cheel Arena 3 a.m., 4 a.m. after the bars and everybody's had a few beverages at this point, turn on the lights and had, I think it was Mikey raced Conroy, and I don't think he ended up beating him, but the Sergi family and Sergi's food is certainly well known within the area. That's an awesome recommendation from whoever your source is. I'm not sure but you've got a little bit of a rivalry when it comes to food rankings going, because I'm tickling my way into becoming a food vlogger.
Yeah, the Ditz Devours page. I mean, you gotta tell the people what's going on down in Greensboro. What you
I've
cooking up
found
with
in
these
Greensboro.
power?
I think the area is more known for barbecue, from what I've been told. But from what I've found, every single place you go has hot dogs, and I love hot dogs. Now it's becoming a problem because I'm keeping tallies. If anyone follows my Twitter, on weeks I've been in town and dogs eaten, and the number of dogs seems to be well escalating the number of weeks I've been in town. Uh, but I'm trying to limit that side of it. But I am on the search for the state and America's greatest chili cheese dog. So it's kind of on the same note as you. We're traveling all over the country. Actually, I'm going to have to get some notes from you on the best places to go get food. But a couple of the people in our front office said that I need to start, taking pictures of where I go when we're on the road, and maybe vlogging my trips. Well, that turned into vlogging the hot dogs that I've been eating, and we found some pretty good ones. I'm pretty proud of the list I've got so far. It's up to like a top 15, and usually all of them come in pairs. So I've whiffed down closing in on 30 hot dogs in a span of about 6 weeks.
Yeah. And you got in North Division, you got all these Northeast cities where I'm not even growing up in, New England. I'm not well versed in where the best chili cheese dog might be in Worcester or in Portland, Maine. So it'll be interesting to see what you find up there.
Well, I've been told Adirondack, our assistant coach, there's a place in Adirondack that apparently has a pretty famous hot dog. So I'm pretty excited for that one. But hopefully by then I've slimmed down. I'm doing CrossFit. We talked about my CrossFit issues last week. I'm mighty sore right now and have a few pillows under my lower back. But hopefully by then I've slimmed down a little bit, and maybe the hot dog venture has concluded and we've found the greatest hot dog, and I can go on to eating some more advanced meats like chicken with parmesan.
Yeah. No, but it's good. I mean, these little food tours that you and I do. I mean, we were sitting down with the interview with Mike Maniscalco, and even like after we started talking, we used going all in about travel stories, and he was telling us about the best burger place in Montreal. So I think that was one of the things that he said to us too, was just you got to have fun with the road trips and lean into that. And part of it is definitely just checking out the restaurant scene. It's one of the best, most fun things about going on the road.
We're gonna have to get a page going as well, so we can kind of rival each other, see who can go viral first, and try to build I've got a head start right now. I'm up to 50 followers. That's big. One or maybe 1.5 weeks down. Pretty proud of the growth the Ditz Devours page. Shameless plug here on the show for our 50 viewers. Maybe we can get, if everybody that listens follows Ditz.Devours, I've doubled my number and I'm up to 100-0 before you've even started your page here. But that's a perfect segue there. Mike Maniscalco is coming up, and we're going to do this a little out of order from what we've done the first two. Instead of breaking it up 4 and 4, we're going to go Carolina Hurricanes first. Have Mike give his breakdown of the Canes' big offseason, which is probably the most notable in this division, and then he kind of sets up where the rest of the division goes. And Owen, and I will give our takes on the rest of the division as well, with the other 7 teams and our rankings to come here. But as we start with Carolina, Owen, a massive change in where they went at the trade deadline to where they are right now. They go out, swing heavy on Mikko Rantanen. They give up the prospect of their depth center in Jack Drury and Marty Necas on the wing, which was kind of impending a guy who had threatened to leave. They couldn't get the contract negotiations in the right space. But Drury was a big piece that I was surprised to see them let go of, especially with the issues at center, which I think still is the one question, if you have one, around this team. But they've locked up the defensive end. They go out and they use what they got in the Rantanen trade, as that was an absolute mess. They get Stankoven back for Rantanen with some big picks. They go and use those picks with the prospect in Morrow for K'Andre Miller and really seal up the back end. For you, where do you see the biggest changes in this Carolina side and avoiding that mishap with Rantanen? We're going to talk to Mike about the exact same thing here, but I want to get your thoughts before we send it over to him.
Yeah, I think he touches on it pretty well, just talking about how I like what he said, where he was saying that like you weren't going to find out who quote unquote won the trade until he signed that extension. And I think what the Canes did, given the situation, and Mike was also, he rightly pointed out, it was good on Rantanen for pointing out that he didn't see himself signing there long term, and letting them know that, so that they were able to go and adjust and get what was a good haul. You mentioned too some of the draft picks that they were able to flip into K'Andre Miller as well, so adapting with that. But also, I think Logan Stankoven is a guy who they have been nothing but extremely high on, and he came in and he fit in really well. I see all the reports about how the coaches and the front office were meeting and talking about, okay, what are we going to get in return for Rantanen? And when they were talking about Stankoven, people were like jumping up and down in excitement, going, that guy is a Carolina Hurricane. He just fits well with the system. And a fast, hard-nosed team. He does fit in well with that group of players. And you asked too about the offseason and what they've done. We can get in. We certainly get into that more with Mike. But I love the Ehlers acquisition, because that's another guy, again, fast, hard-nosed player, like just complements the Stankoven, the Seth Jarvis, like all these like nitty gritty, will just like a bulldog almost, like they just run you into the wall. Like, so I really like what they're building, and we use the word identity a lot, and I just feel like the identity of this team is they're sticking to it, and they're adding to it, and they're building something really well. So I think, to the surprise of no one, Canes are going to be pretty high in our Central Division rankings.
And we've talked a lot about cap space. They still have over $10 million to go in available cap, which is unbelievable when you think about the big game hunting that they did in the offseason on Ehlers, who outside of Mitch Marner was kind of the big name. They go out, they sign Stankoven at $6.5 million. They signed Jackson Blake 8 years at $5.5 million, which is going to be an unbelievable steal when he comes into shape. He's already, made his name as a top 6 guy that was just a rookie last year and really exploded in the last half of the season as well. Then they go out and grab Ehlers on a bargain deal of his own. And I think that was just outstandingly well done that they've even, left room to go do more. If that comes in the side of going out and grabbing a top 6 center, if you might need one, or maybe it's even just a depth center on the 4C spot. They've got a lot of room to grow. I want to get into the goaltending here because this has been the question, the preached media side of what are the Canes going to do with trading for a goalie all through last year with the injury nightmares that they had when they still grinded it out towards the top of the division, finishing in that second spot. But they go out and they just re-sign Freddie Anderson. They keep him around. Pyotr Kochetkov continues to develop, and each of these guys now will be around. Freddie Anderson, just a 1-year deal, so he's UFA coming up. Kochetkov's got 2 more years at $2 million. But for me, it's an outstanding bargain, and I love Freddie Anderson when it comes to the game he brings when he's healthy. The question marks come around the injuries, and sure, they're there. But when you have him in the crease, he is an absolute dog for this team. And if they can split time between the two, and I love the aspect, and it comes to like the fantasy football thought of you can't play scared when you're going into a draft and think of what happened in the past seasons of a guy who got injured and ruined your season. When this is a guy that if he's healthy for the whole year, $2.75 million is a complete steal when you get this tandem at 4.75. I'm just gonna if I'm Tulsky, I'm gonna keep signing Anderson until he's ready to retire at 35 years of age. Maybe get one more year out of him next year when he turns UFA at an even lower level and the cap continues to go up.
Yeah, and you mentioned too the importance of having a good tandem. I think all the more important when you consider that Anderson's going to be, playing in the Olympics with Denmark, and just the additional toll that is going to have. Just being able to have 2 goalies that you can ride throughout the regular season, you can manage their workload. I mean, we've seen in the Metro with the season the Capitals had last year and the goaltending, and we're going to get into all that later, obviously, but I think what it shows is that now in the NHL to finish high in the standings, if you have a goaltending tandem that's hot, it gives you a big advantage. And so I think you're right to point that out. And I think that the more that these 2 guys can push each other, the better and better off the Canes are going to be this regular season.
Well, on the terms of great cap space deals, I've brought the shirt back. Seth Jarvis, my fantasy dog from last year, and I think he's going to be explosive again. We'll send it over to Mike Maniscalco and the inside look here on the Carolina Hurricanes. Owen and I are back to break down the rest of the division after this. You're listening to the Fifth Liners Hockey Podcast. Another broadcaster from the top line of NHL joining the Fifth Liners here, and the voice of a lot of celebration throughout my college career, Mike Maniscalco, the play-by-play voice of the Carolina Hurricanes. Mike, welcome aboard. Thank you for joining us here.
Well, let me tell you, we actually had to do a ranking. I don't even know if I would be associated with a line. I would be like, well, he could be a 7th liner if we expanded the rosters out to 40 players. So just happy to be here, happy to help the team, and hope to provide as much offense as I can here today, boys.
I think that puts us down in the SPHL or the Fed League, Owen. So I guess be careful where we trot from there. But a very exciting offseason for your area here, Mike, and the Carolina Hurricanes specifically, where you make it to the conference final last year, a year that was maybe expected to be somewhat of a rebuild, and not in the fact of missing playoffs and being in the bottom of the barrel, but with the big names that left the team 2 off seasons ago, coming off a dominant regular season and years of dominance, maybe the expectation was that you'd be kind of third in the conference and push towards the playoffs, but not go as deep as they did. And when you look back on that conference final run, what was able to make Carolina so successful in the fact that they survived the Rantanen mishap? They reached the conference final and not only survive what could have been a rebuild, but thrive through it.
Well, the one thing about this organization, Casey, is it's never been about one guy. It isn't. It's always the sum, and it's not the parts. So when you say they survived the Rantanen thing, he was in where the organization really should be applauded. And I know that it didn't work out. It wasn't the happy ending for those parties, but they took the big swing, right? And that's what you want for a team that, how are you going to get over that hump? How are you going to beat the Florida Panthers? How are you going to get into the Stanley Cup final? Well, Mikko Rantanen was available. This team took the swing, and it turned out the way that it did, where, Rantanen pretty much basically put the cards out. At least he did it and let the organization know how he was going to play. So then they could pivot and bring in a player like Logan Stankoven and add 2 first-round picks. And when, it's so weird when you break down everything, everybody is so quick to, you guys hear it all the time. Grade the trade. Well, you can't grade them until, and that trade for me never was going to be graded until Rantanen signed an extension. And then you could say, okay, this is how it works out. Well, to turn around and add players and add picks on what could have really been a tough situation for the organization, I think they made a ton of lemonade out of it. And that's a good thing, a really good thing. The thing that stands out to me about the run, though, is you add a player like Logan Stankoven and watch him in the playoffs. And, he is not a gamer. He's just one hell of a player for his size. He never loses board battles. He goes to the front of the net. He's willing to pay the price. So you added that into the mix. The goaltending was really good in the playoffs, especially the first 2 rounds with Frederik Andersen. I know that is, and at some point, I'm sure one of you guys is going to ask me about the goaltending this year for the Carolina Hurricanes, which is the same story. We're putting it on repeat. But they have that. The penalty kill travels everywhere. And for me, when you get into the playoffs, if you either have to have the best power play or the penalty kill, that is number 1 in the postseason. And the Canes penalty kill does travel pretty much everywhere. But I laughed at all of those things at the start of last season when people are like, oh, man, I think the Hurricanes are going to – and I understood. You lose big-time players like Brett Pesce and Brady Shea, who have been a part of the DNA of the team for the majority of the turnaround and the success that they've had. And 2 key cogs on the defense like that. But you add in a Sean Walker, who I really like. I think he's an underappreciated player. You guys have dealt with that where there's a player that you've seen or that's been waiting in the wings and then they get their opportunity. You're like, yeah, it stinks that this guy graduated or this guy gets called up, but this guy's ready to go. And that was Sean Walker fitting in with the Carolina Hurricanes. Shane Gostisbehere was ready to go with the team and have that opportunity. So really you plugged in 2 pieces that aren't Pesce and Shea. But Jalen Chatfield was ready for a little bit more. And Dmitry Orlov was going to get an elevated role. So when people at the start of the year are even, flirting with, I don't know if this is a playoff team, I'm like, what the hell do you guys watch? Like, you look around the conference, like, if you want to say they're not going to win the division, okay, I'm fine with that. But to say that they might miss the playoffs to me was asinine. And the other good thing for this group, is I give a super long-winded answer to it, is they don't care about that stuff. They really don't. It is... You hear it all the time. Oh, we don't listen. We don't pay. They really don't pay attention to it. They just care about their group, what's in their locker room, and where they go from there. And they knew what they had.
And I think that's the perfect description when you say kind of making lemonade out of it, because it could have fallen flat if they don't take that risk to trade him to Dallas and let him do exactly what Gensel did and walk in free agency and get nothing for it. Instead, they turn it into Keandre Miller, essentially, with the draft capital that they get. And there's 2 ways to look at this that I want to kind of poke at you with. Morrow being a guy out of the NCAA, he's been talked about for, it feels like, a decade with his development and being kind of a top prospect in the Canes organization. And we saw him in and out of the lineup for the postseason, kind of his first chance at getting a crack with some injuries. Now they ship him away, but they bring in Keandre Miller, who's a known and developed talent here. What do you see the impact of Keandre Miller being, and with the loss of Morrow and having to send a couple of those draft picks, how tough is that to see that side of it go to bring him in when it could end up being a great thing with him being an explosive player and kind of exactly what this team needs with a lot of deep prospects?
Whenever you give up an unknown quantity, and that's what Scott Morrow still is at the NHL level, you better be bringing in something that you're pretty sure is plug and play with the group that you have. Keandre Miller is more than plug and play with his Carolina Hurricanes group. He is, however you want to put the top pair together, if he does end up playing next to Jacob Slavin or whoever he ends up playing next to, if it is, Sean Walker, I was just talking about, or Jalen Chatfield, he is really ready to, I think, take a big step. Sometimes when you play for certain teams in an organization, and I'm not taking a shot at the Rangers here, but, they had a season where everything that could go wrong pretty much did for them. So then you start pointing at this guy, this guy, this guy. And then, what do we do? Do we extend Keandre Miller? Do we give him the money? And considering the season we just had. So sometimes guys need a fresh start. And I think that this will be Brady Shea 2.0. I keep saying that, where he comes from the Rangers. He's going to get an opportunity to play big minutes with the Carolina Hurricanes. And you know what he's not going to have to be? The guy. He's not going to be, and this sounds like I'm taking a shot at Adam Fox when I say this, he's not the guy now responsible for covering for Adam Fox, who doesn't have any interest in playing in his own zone when, Adam Fox wants to get points. And he's a former Norris Trophy winner. We know he's a fabulous player, but sometimes you try to put fits together that don't fit. I look at all of the combinations where you can play Keandre Miller in the minutes you can give him in the style that the Canes play. And I go back to the playoff series 2 years ago when the Rangers knocked out the Hurricanes. For my money, Keandre Miller was the best player on the ice for either team. And he hits, he has size, and now I think that he just gets out of that spotlight and can just play. So I think that he'll flourish. So, there's an old saying, guys, and I'm an old man now, so I've heard them all, but you got to give to get. And I wish nothing but the best for Scott Morrow. I hope he turns into the offensive player that he was at UMass Amherst. Anytime that you're breaking Cale Makar's records, I don't care if it's freshman, I don't care if it's, 8th grade records, you're doing something right. So that Morrow has that game to him. But when you get a chance to get a young player coming into his prime that you've already seen can play big NHL minutes, I think that was worth the capital that they gave up for Keandre Miller.
And just on the topic of another elite defenseman, you were talking too about like underappreciated players earlier in this. And I think a player who, he's definitely not underappreciated in Raleigh, but I think you could argue he was underappreciated around the league until this year when he was talked about a lot. Is like Slavin, I feel like after the Four Nations, everyone was talking about him a ton. And I just remember after that Capitals series, and Coach Carberry shouted him out and just said, like, this guy is very underrated, what he does. And I did want to ask you about him because you're seeing him play on a day-to-day basis, and you could articulate it as well as any. But what really stands out about him and makes him such a dominant player in this league?
I think he is one of those guys who, whatever he wanted to play, he was going to be great at. Like, he's just a great all-around athlete. We all grew up with these guys where, if they wanted to play football, he would have been the quarterback or the best wide receiver. He would have been the best baseball player. He would have been the standout pitcher or the best hitter. His hand-eye coordination, guys, off the charts. And I say that because in the Four Nations, he got to display it. We see it all the time. So I don't take it for granted. I get to see it all the time. And people are like, where did this come from? I'm like, have you ever watched a Hurricanes game? This is every night. Every night you get this out of Jacob Slavin. Like, the weird nights are the ones where it is an off night, which I think is 1 out of 82. And even then, I think I'm going on the over on the 1. He will make a play, guys, and you can appreciate this. It's going to look like a real simple play, and I'll do my best to set it up for everybody who's listening, watching here on the podcast. It's going to be a simple dump in along the wall, off the ice about a foot or two, maybe not necessarily a hard rim, but try to flip it in. He will knock it down, and in one motion, knock it down, lay it flat, and then hand off a transition pass the other way that gets the puck going the other. And it happens so nonchalant that you're like, I don't really know what happens. And I'm at the point, I'm like, well, Slavin knocks it down and, try to chip it in, knock down by Slavin and go on the other. It just, you can't really do it justice, but every night he makes that play. He doesn't panic with the puck. He takes hits. He can be more physical than I think what he's given credit for. But he is, and I know that I'm going to sound like I'm on the payroll, and I am, but he is for me, prototype current NHL defenseman, meaning he takes away time and space. He knows how to gap up. He can pat. He does not waste time in his own end trying to look for an outlet, because if it's there, he goes through the middle, but he knows that he can go off the boards if that's the right play to get it out. I think he's patented that gap wedge that he can hit. How he must have a hole-in-one every single summer when he goes and plays golf. Another thing that he's great at that I'm sure that if he wanted to, he'd be on the PGA Tour. But you'll watch him flip this puck, this aerial flip out of his own zone, and it goes about, I'm going to put it in the ballpark about 100 feet in the air. So, you do like a good 35, 40-yard shot, gets it right there, and away it goes. And it's just every night you see it. And one other thing, he made a play against Connor McDavid this past year. And McDavid has the puck at his own blue line, and he, takes off. This is Connor McDavid. So I'm sitting there going, oh boy, we're going to see something. And he crosses the Canes blue line, and it's basically him and Slavin one-on-one. And McDavid goes to make a move where he's got it on the forehand and he's going to drag it across, and Slavin just pokes it away and knocks it up the ice. And I went back to watch it, and McDavid almost has this look like, what just happened? That doesn't happen to me. How did this guy do that? And that's the thing. So the hand-eye coordination, and plus he just has this unbelievable temperament where it's the next play and the next play. He never gets caught thinking about something that happened in the first period, or if he makes if he puts the puck in a spot where it's not supposed to go, which again is rare, he's just on to the next play. And he is, if I had to build the perfect modern NHL defenseman, he's the guy who I point to.
Well, you and I, before we started recording, were joking about golf talent, and it sounds like Slavin might be in the running for 2028, but 2026 in the Olympics is one that he's got his name all over. It's going to shake up the schedule quite a bit. And when you look at the Canes roster, already named Aho and Anderson, who will be there, the Slavin's probably a shoo-in to get there as well. But maybe some more names further. There will be other teams that have a long list of guys that have to play on top of the compact schedule. How much of a challenge is that when you think about staying healthy? Guys like Freddie Anderson, who you need to be healthy for that tandem to work with Kochetkov, and then you have to worry about the extra games going overseas and the risk of your assets there. But trying to what differences are we going to see in trying to moderate the health and the longevity as you look with a team like the Canes, a team like the Panthers, who's going to have a bunch, Edmonton Oilers with McDavid and Draisaitl, who are going to be over there, who need those stars to be in the lineup and be at their best to have success, but they're also going to have to keep them healthy all the way through run through late June with this long schedule.
Yeah, that's, I think, the question that is on the top of every head coach and every general manager's mind. The simple way that I would go about it is you can't worry about it. You just can't. You've got to play your guys the way that you'd play them, and not think about, we're going to have to save them because they're going to play all of these games in the Olympics. And because you're trying to forecast the unknown. And for the European players, and this is not a knock, this is, I think it's a great thing. The gold medal means more to them. It really does. Now, if it's US and Canada, and now the stakes are really raised, but for the Finns and the Swedes and the Czechs, it really is a matter of pride, and they want to win that tournament so bad. The Russians, they want to play. We know that they're not allowed in, and you just got to think how much of that is killing guys like Alexander Ovechkin and Andrei Svechnikov, guys who would love to get that chance to play on that stage. But I don't think you can worry about it, and I do think that there is enough of a pause or a break where I'm not worried about the guys who are playing. I'm worried about how do you get the guys who aren't playing during that tournament to get right back into, because that's when the schedule gets really compressed. And you got to go from, you've been playing, I think it works out to, I think I counted it. I think the Canes have like 58 games before the All-Star break that'll be played, and then, or before the Olympic break. And then here we go. And now it gets really compressed. So what do you do about those guys where you're not playing for 3.5 weeks? So that's where I think everybody gets always focused on the guys playing. I start to worry about the guys when you come back. Do you get back up to speed, or are you ready to go? Because remember, at the Four Nations, all the guys who played in it, and at the level of especially USA Canada, they said when they came back to the NHL, the speed of the first few games was a joke. Like, we went from going from IndyCar racing to go-kart racing. It's a little different. But I think the other thing that I take out of it, where I don't go to any of the negatives for the Olympic break, guys, how fired up were all of us over the Four Nations in the first Canada-US game? Don't you dare tell me you weren't texting or calling your friends when the Kachucks were taking on Canada, going, "Are you guys watching this?" Like it breeds that really big interest in hockey, and so I'm all for it, because whenever you can do best on best, we're the winners at the end of it, and you go from there. Yeah, you got to be concerned. It's a lot of games played, and it's a lot of opportunity, but I also don't think that the Olympics are, well, they can get physical and nasty. It's not an NHL playoff physical and nasty. It's more of a, I'll show you, I'll make this play. Although now I have to rule in the Kachucks for this one, so maybe it will be physical and nasty, depending on if Matthew gets on the ice in time to do this. But I think it's a good thing. I really do. I don't look at it as a detriment. I'm going to try to really this year push it as a positive, instead of, people saying, well, yeah, you know what? And tomorrow you could walk outside and slip on the driveway and, break your hip. And considering I am now on the other side of 50 years old, that's a real concern for me, fellas.
Yeah.
Not playing in Italy.
We did want to ask you, we have such a big audience. Well, for the big part of this audience for our broadcast is like aspiring broadcasters, people who are, really want to do what you do, want to do play-by-play. And we do like to ask just kind of about your story and how you got into hockey and then into play-by-play. And I, from doing a little bit of research, that it's something that you've always wanted to do. So just wanted to kind of ask about the background on how you got into it and how you made your way down to Raleigh.
All right. First off, to all of you aspiring broadcasters out there, just quit, go find another job. Long hours, you're away from home, you're going to miss holidays. Some of the pay is not great. I'm doing this for job protection by telling you don't do this.
I love that, Mike, because that will scare away people that are competing for our jobs too.
Boys, I'm telling you, self-preservation becomes a big thing, Owen and Casey. No, it's for me when I realized that it was going to be a severe lack of talent that was going to keep me from being a professional athlete. What was the next best thing? And I wanted to get into covering it. And the funny thing is, going back to the Stone Ages when I started, like that's when ESPN, there was not 24-hour sports talk radio stations. ESPN Sports Center was like, that was the goal. Like you wanted to get on there. My dream was to be the play-by-play voice for the New York Yankees on the radio side of things. Like that was when it was all said and done, how do I get to that field? Or I wanted to be a columnist and then get on, the sports reporters or the panel shows that they have. But my path was not linear. And the one thing that I tell every aspiring broadcaster is, if you think that it's this A to B journey, for some it is. But for most of us, it's not. So don't close doors on opportunity. Meaning, if you want to stay in sports, but there's an opportunity to get on TV somewhere, if you want a TV play-by-play job or a reporting job, but it's news, not necessarily sports, well, don't shut that off just because it's not sports. Like you have to keep your options open. And that's how you get a lot of experience. You get in front of people. Anytime you can have a reel that you can throw in front of bosses, because you might stick at a job and it never opens up for you. So then what are you doing? You're going to think back to, you had this opportunity and you turned it down. So my route was not, circuitous, but it was not straight. I went from sports talk in Buffalo to sports talk in Richmond, but I always kept, anytime there was a play-by-play gig open. I didn't care if it was high school football or, Division III college baseball, or if it was, the corgi races. It's keeping yourself sharp. And that's the other thing. I think like so many people feel I just have to be this disciplined. This is what I need to do. I can't do anything else. Well, no, to call basketball and to call baseball is completely different from calling hockey to calling football. So you keep yourself sharp. And again, it opens up doors for you. Also, be nice. I know that this sounds weird, but be nice. That stands out because in this business, there are a lot of people who, for whatever reason, aren't. I don't get it, but that's fine. But always work hard because somebody's always judging your work somewhere. You might not know it, but there's a boss or there is somebody behind the scenes who is like, oh yeah, I worked with him and hard worker. I worked with her. Hard worker, was great, was prepared, did the job, just a joy to work with. And they were nice. So that really helps out. I know that's a very Fred Rogers take there, Owen, about, hey neighbor, let's be nice, but it does make a difference. But my big thing is always, you don't have to take no for an answer, but at the same time, don't put yourself with so many blinders on that you limit your opportunity to go someplace else.
Our partner restaurant a couple Saturdays from now has a wiener dog race going on. So that might have just sparked me to go ask if they need a voice for it.
Hey, you're right down the road. You're right down the road, Casey. If you need me, I can come in. I can do, something. Be the analyst. Why not? Here we go. That schnauzer, you know where they came from.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask too, because you mentioned like corgi race, but like I don't know. Yeah, I can relate to kind of just calling random. I'm a field hockey game tomorrow. I don't really know too much about it. So, was there like a specific sport or random event that was like you remember that's like was so out of left field that you ended up doing?
It's more locations than events that I ended up doing. Although I one time had to introduce Adam Carolla, the stand-up comic, to a sold-out show in Durham. And I thought it was just, hey, here's Adam. Like, that's what it was. And we're all backstage and met him. And there are people go, all right, you got 5 minutes. And I'm like, I'm not a stand-up comedian. What do you mean I got 5 minutes? And they're like, oh, yeah, you got 5 minutes to fill until you bring out Adam. And I'm like, okay. So that one was a little unnerving. Somehow I got through it. Self-deprecating humor was a really good thing on that one. So that got me through. I have done broadcasts in various and sundry locations. There was a golf broadcast that I was at in the radio days where, I joke, it's a thunderstorm. It's about 48 degrees and I'm holding two wires together as I'm broadcasting to stay on the air. Those were always fun days. I had to do a talk show from an adult bookstore once. Kind of hard to keep your concentration going on that one, but that's a true story. Yeah, it's exactly what you think, guys. You don't alter your first draft when I say that. There used to be places where people would go to buy that stuff, not the internet, just so you know. So that one was a little bit odd, but I had to do a college football broadcast, not in the press box, across the way in the stands, and it was in Kane, New Jersey. It was the Kane Cougars, and me and the analyst were sitting amongst the parents of the Kane Cougars, and they were not a very good football team, and they were getting beat bad. And he and I were like, we're the guys sitting here in New Jersey. Now the Sopranos hadn't come out yet, but with my last name, we got to be nice. And halftime finally happens, and one of the parents turns around and like, we can hear your broadcast. And we're like, oh boy, they're going to throw us over the edge. Here we go. And they're like, our team's not that good. You don't have to be this nice about what's happening. So that's where I went, okay, all right. Honesty is the best policy. So those are a couple of standout broadcasts that I've had where it's either weird or, please just get me to the end of it so I can get home.
I mean, I think it's like it makes sense with you mentioning like knowing your location and being so important. I mean, we were talking right before we hopped on here about just some of your travel stories and things like that. And I did want to make sure we asked for our listeners about that story in San Jose. We'll just let you take it away.
All right. So we're traveling out to San Jose, and it's early in the season, and I just got a flu shot. And we're going actually to California first. So it was one of the weird California road trips where it's LA first, then San Jose, then back to Anaheim. And I'm the ringside reporter and the pregame show host and the intermission host. So, there's nothing to it. So I get this shot on Friday. We leave for LA on Monday. And we're flying out there, and like halfway through the flight, I don't feel right. And I'm sitting there going, there's that old myth that if you get the flu shot, you get the flu. And I'm like, oh man, do I have like a stomach flu from this? And the worst thing you can say, and you guys know this when you're around a team, is especially to the trainers, I have the flu. They boot me out over Kansas and say, find your way home. So we get to LA and isn't feeling great. And do the game that Tuesday night, and nothing's getting better. And my wife was actually watching the games, and she goes, "Is it hot in Staples Center?" It was Staples at the time. And I said, "No, it's freezing in here." She goes, "You're sweating, and I can see it on TV," because I told her I wasn't feeling good. And she goes, "Maybe you got to check." So I got checked out. Had a stage manager who was awesome. He made sure that. I went and saw an EMT, and they're doing all this stuff. And they're like, well, where you aren't feeling right, there's nothing there. They're like, there's no major organ. I don't know what's going on with you, but you should go to the emergency room. Like, no, I don't need that. We're playing San Jose tomorrow night. I got to fly up there. So get on the plane, gets worse, and then just gets kind of unbearable. And I checked myself into a hospital in San Jose, into an emergency room, which it's a comedy and a drama all at the same time. I get told when they finally get me in the back room and do all this stuff, they do a C scan real quick, a CAT scan, and they go, "We found a mass in your abdomen, and it's rather sizable. We don't have the surgeon or the facilities to handle this. We got to move you. Are you okay with that?" I'm like, "What am I going to say? No." I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So I get moved to this other hospital in San Jose, and then, long story short, it's a really big tumor called a desmoid tumor. They just grow and grow, and that's their danger. They don't ever stop. It's basically scar tissue, and your body doesn't know to shut off the switch to stop making it. And it to attach to things, and it attached to my favorite small intestine and ruptured it. So that was my problem. And I flew with that, which tells you what a genius I am. So to all of you broadcasters out there, if you do not feel good, you do not have to play hero. Go get checked out, or else you deliver the ugliest looking baby in the history of the world. I saw a picture of the thing. It's terrible, and we'll just leave it at that. But I was fortunate enough to make it to North Carolina. I use all of my good luck on my bad luck, guys. So that's one of the good things about me. I was able to come back, and it got treated, and it's the two best words you'll ever hear when you hear the word tumor. It's non-cancerous. But they do return, that's the thing. But I learned from that moment, if I got a sneeze that doesn't feel or sound right, I'm calling the doctor and making sure that I'm okay.
Well, with this being my first pro job, a lot of the packing I've done comes in big bus trips or in the back of my Prius with 12 suits packed, so I can choose that. You had to learn to pack and have probably become a pro on it. What advice do you have in the packing game of pro sports and learning how to travel and be well equipped?
I'm going to, Casey, I wish you would have sought me out earlier, because you don't need that many suits. My first ever road trip, there were 6 games, and I brought 6 suits, because I'm like, I need a different suit every night with a different shirt and a different tie. No, you don't. And I'm on TV. I've learned that if it's 6 games, you bring 2 suits, you bring 4 different shirts, and if you want to, you can bring 6 ties. That seems I have learned how to travel so much. Where if it doesn't, if you're looking at your thing, you're like, do I really need that 4th t-shirt? Am I going to wear this someplace out? No, you're going to sleep in the same pair of shorts every night, pretty much. And, you're going to work out, bring some workout clothes, you get that all taken care of. But like I learned right away, bringing 6 suits, like all you're doing is adding unnecessary weight to the plane. And then the trainers don't like you if you do that. So the equipment managers are really upset with you for it. So you're on that road trip because you're going to a different, well, miner's a little different. You guys play some weekend series, so I get it. But when you're traveling and you're like, I'm going to be in another city the next night, they're not going to know what suit you wore the night before. Nobody's going to be sitting there going, oh, he's wearing the dark gray suit again. You might get a couple of people be like, didn't you wear that tie 3 games ago? Yeah, it was 3 games ago. I like it. I'm bringing it back out. It's good luck. That's always the other thing, too, because you know that we're responsible for all of the things that happen as announcers, guys. So if there's a no-hitter, if the no-hitter gets broken up, if there's a shutout, it's all on us. We all will it to happen. So my fallback is when somebody calls it out, I'm like, oh, they won in this. I wore this tie and they won in it. Then if I don't wear it the next night, then I get somebody going, how come you're not wearing the tie? I'm like, okay, it's fine.
My mom and girlfriend are sitting at home applauding right now, who have personally seen the battle that goes on in my closet and the amount of clothes that continue to accumulate. So they're probably beyond happy to hear that advice getting thrown my way. Not sure that's going to help cut down suit numbers, but maybe for packing for sure. I'm going to need a lot of help, Mike. I'll tell you that. I'm a packing nightmare.
I'm not telling you don't own 6 suits. I'm just telling you don't have to bring 6 of them on the road. So, and then just leave it stand there, and it's fine. So, and I got this advice from like Hall of Famers going, "Did you bring this many suits? What are you doing? you don't get down to the weight room?" So it's all set. There you go. That's some good advice, kids, right there. So, plus if you've got like carry-on bags, it saves your shoulders. It's easy.
Yeah. That's funny. You mentioned like fans sometimes, or people being superstitious about what you wear and the whole announcer's jinx and everything. Do you have any superstitions as a broadcaster, or are you able to kind of manage that well?
No, I'm not superstitious. I'm just a little stitious. So there are a few things, but it's not like, oh, the team's doing well because of my input. It's things for a broadcast for me. Like, I don't eat before a TV game. The latest I'll eat is like 1 o'clock because I have this unnatural fear of having something in my teeth that I will never be able to get out. And then I'm stuck with that on TV. Or there are enough viral moments as broadcasters that we stumble into without, wanting to be a part of it. I am really stressed out about eating something and it doesn't agree with me, and having that moment on the air. And I'm like, nope, don't need that. So that's one of the little like superstitions or quirks that I have. But no, other than that, I fill out like I have to handwrite my notes. Like it's not a fear of technology. I like technology. I use it a lot, but I'm always like, I'm going to put everything on a computer and I'm going to go to print it out, and we lose power for the time I need to print it, or the file crashes or gets lost. So I've learned to do things by hand, but that's also something that helps me. And it's funny because I heard Joe Buck talk about this the other day, and it kind of shocked me that I'm thinking, okay, you're at this level when you're talking about national, that he writes it out by hand. And, it's for me just a learning thing. I will use the same pen though, over and over and over. Like once I get a good pen, Owen, I do not switch it up. Like I'm not switching to, oh, well, I need this one. I keep that one till it's out of ink. And it's usually a very sad goodbye. I just throw it over my shoulder. But I get very protective of, a good writing pen. I don't lend it out to people. So that, I guess, is a little superstitious. It's a weird one, I know.
Well, it's awesome as broadcasters. I know we're all creatures of habit. So that's good. But I did also want to ask too about simulcasting, because it's becoming more and more common in the NHL. Radio and television broadcast same time. I wanted to ask how do you kind of approach that? Is it more of a radio call because you have to be descriptive, or do you kind of lend itself to being like TV, or just how do you walk that line?
The funny thing is the people in TV who are the TV higher ups will tell you they don't want a radio call, because the people watching can see it. So I don't need to say that, it's a shot from the top of the right circle. it's too many words in their opinion, but I try to be mindful that there are people who are listening on radio. So it's, for me, it's always it's the way that we're going when we're like, look at this replay, or as these numbers will show you. I can't say every number that's out there, especially when we're putting up certain graphics. So I'm mindful of that, but I try to, when I get the opportunity, be a little directional on the simulcast, like, darts to his left or circles behind the net. So there is that sense of proportion to the game. And again, I've there's more than one way to call it. And there are some people, when it comes to the call of the game, like where the bosses are like, that's fine, you can be directional to it. And then there are some people who are like, no, you don't say it at all. We want them to watch TV. We don't care about that. But it's something, again, where I'm mindful, but my call is really more of, if it's a simulcast, it's a TV call more than a radio call. And it's just one of those things where that's what it does boil down to. But, I can mix in here and there, drops the puck, here we go. One of the things that I try to do, the funny thing is when it's a national game, is I try to help some fans who want to sync up our call and get the call of, you do something, it seems insignificant, but like drops the puck. So you can, he dropped the puck. All right, now I'm, catching up to it. Here we go, and can play there. But there's so many really good play-by-play guys out there right now. And, simulcast is becoming more and more and more. You're going around the league, a couple of years ago it was 3, and I think now we're up to 7. So it's not in inevitability, but we're going to, I think, see more and more head that way. So, and I think that you get certain people now who understand that. So if the play-by-play can throw in a little bit more direction, not where it overtakes everything, because really for me, for TV, it's allowing Trip Tracy to really get the analysis in for what you just saw. Like that's really the bigger thing on the TV side of things. And, with that explanation, hopefully it translates well over the radio that we're serving the people there. But no, my call doesn't, it's not like I'm freaking out going, I have to say that moving left to right. Well, if you're watching it on TV, they're moving left to right. I can't say that. If we're just doing a radio call, I get to be really descriptive. But no, it's something where I try to strike a decent enough balance where if you're listening on the radio, you at least know where the puck is from my call.
Mike, you said you booked off the whole afternoon. As much as I want to hold you to the next 3 hours, we'll close it off here and go back to the Metro as a whole. And looking at this upcoming year and considering what happened last year, the Devils, all kinds of disappointment, and a lot of that being injury prone. The Rangers as well, a disaster of a season with the expectations coming off the President's Trophy. You've got the outstanding season the Capitals put out, the Blue Jackets gaining traction. All of that considered, adding on what we talked about with the Canes adding, really coming into this season as a threatening presence in the Metro. How do you see this division shaking down? Do you see New Jersey and New York bouncing back? Are the Capitals going to be able to maintain that? Are the Canes the President's Trophy winners when we come to next April?
Well, I think the one thing that a lot of teams might have learned, and I don't believe in this President's Trophy curse or jinx. I mean, it's a thing because we talk about it, but what Florida did this past season, which is we just got to get in, and home ice doesn't matter. If you're good enough, you're going to win no matter where you play. I don't think that there is this urge the way that it used to be to we got to have 62 wins and win the President's Trophy and make sure that we have home ice. I think it's more, are we playing our best when April gets here and peaking for the playoffs? Like that's what I think the secret is now for a lot of teams. That said, I think that the Metro Division is the Canes to lose this year. It's their division. I look at New Jersey. I think they're the biggest threat if they're healthy. Because if they're healthy, that's one hell of a roster that Tom Fitzgerald has put up there. But the injuries are a big concern in New Jersey. They've got just a bunch of players who can't stay healthy. But if they do, There's a ton of firepower. I think defensively they've gotten better, and they can be a tough team to play against. Washington, I think that the Caps, they got that Ovi bump last year, going for the record and passing Wayne Gretzky for the most goals in NHL history. And they got great goaltending. I mean, they got it every single night when it needed to be there. I look at the Caps. They also, in a strange way, I would never say that not putting TJ Oshie and Nick Backstrom in your lineup was a good thing. Like, I never think I would. If I did that, you should either fire me or check me into and make sure I have my faculty, because that's an insane thing to say. But it was actually, in the long run, the best thing that happened for Washington, because they had young players who, okay, Alexei Protas, you have to step up now. Connor McMichael, you have to step up now. And they did. And they gave young guys more room, and they got faster if you watch them. But now everybody knows the book on them, where I don't think they really snuck up on teams, but it was more of they're going to come back down to earth. Yeah, it's a hot start, but that'll find its level. And they just stayed at that level all year. I think that they'll take a step back, but I think that they're almost like where the Hurricanes were last year, when people are saying, well, I don't know how good they'll be after this happened. They're a playoff team. And the question is, are they going to run away with the way they did the first 3 or 4 months? Pittsburgh, who knows what's going on? Philly's going to be tougher to play against, but I don't know if they're better. But they're going to have a pretty damn good coach behind the bench in Rick Tocchet. And I think that Keith Jones and Danny Briere are putting that team in the right direction. But they're still a little ways away from there. Columbus, everything they dealt with last year to even be as close to the playoffs as they were, that to me was the best story in the regular season of the NHL. Team-wise, with what they did in that horrible tragedy with the Godot brothers, losing their lives before the start of the season, and for the job Don Waddell did, and behind the bench Dean Evison to keep them on track. The question is now, do their young guys take a step up? The Islanders, they're the weird one for me, because it's the end of the Lou Lamoriello era, but are they going to be, now are the shackles off and they can play more offensively? Will we see more of that? Or, they know what they are and they're going to be hard to play against the Rangers. Maybe they get the Mike Sullivan bump for the juice, but I'm not 100% sure, because you look at that roster, and I like Chris Drury a lot, but there was only so much he could do. And I don't think that they added anything significant where I'm like, well, that makes them way better than what they were last year. I like Gavrikov a ton, but Keandre Miller is the guy who I think you could build around, and that's the question. So no, I think the Metro is the Canes to lose, and basically it just comes down to the health. And I mean, that's everybody. We can say that for everybody. Does the health stay that way? But if all things are even, the way that the Canes are built, adding Nick Ehlers into the mix, who is another guy who's going to be going over to Italy and playing for Denmark along with Freddie Anderson. But he's going to add, I look at the ads that the Canes have, they were all positives. They all fill a role or a need. Doesn't mean that this is a perfect team in their construct right now, but I think in the Metro, they're the team. They're going to be the hunted, and it's deservedly so.
Well, in 2006, the Olympic year boasted pretty well for Carolina hockey. We're hoping that's the same fate coming up, and looking forward to, in my opinion as well, watching the Carolina Hurricanes run the Metro. Mike, thank you so much for your time here. Looking forward to meeting you later this week as Canes camp gets underway, and cannot wait for the season to get going.
No, appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me. Seriously, anytime in the season, if somebody backs out or gets promoted to the 4th or the 3rd line, and you need me to take a shift, I'm here for you. Casey, welcome to the family. I can't tell you how excited people are in Raleigh, and it's not blowing smoke that there's a hockey team in Greensboro where there's an affiliation with the Hurricanes, and we know that there's going to be headlines with the ownership group, and that's a great thing for it. But more importantly, really good hockey market, and great to have you in. So anytime you got the time to come into Raleigh, and I'll see if I can make a few trips down 40 to jump into Greensboro and say hello. Looking forward to it. Should be great. Thanks for having me, boys. I appreciate it.
What a month here of big talent we've had with Joe O'Donnell, John Forsland, and now his predecessor with the Carolina Hurricanes in Mike Maniscalco. Big shoes we got to find a way to fill to keep it going strong in our final episode next week as we head to the Atlantic.
Oh yeah, it's great time of year as we get closer to the NHL season, and certainly was interesting to hear Mike's thoughts about how the whole Metro division will play out. Obviously, he's feeling pretty good about where the Canes will sit. I think the two of us both can agree that they'll probably finish relatively high, but there's also some room for debate, and I'm looking forward to getting into that for sure.
Carolina just missed the 100-point mark last year, 99 points with 47 regulation victories. Where we go next, the East winners and the Washington Capitals on the heels of Alex Ovechkin's stardom and the great chase conclusion with a new all-time leading goal scorer in the NHL. Every single one of them has been scored with the Washington Capitals. 111 points for the Caps last year. They were leading the pace for a lot of it, and the President's Trophy fell off a little bit at the end, lost to the Carolina Hurricanes in the second round of the Eastern Conference. But now getting some youth into the lineup. They add Alexi Protas to continue going on. I guess not an ad, but they will probably have him up in the top six quite a bit. Pierre-Luc Dubois worked out with the trade they made in the 1-for-1 out to LA. Tom Wilson continues to run people over, and then you've got the youth movement and Ryan Leonard coming out of Hockey East. See what he can do. Anthony Beauvillier, a big ad. And on the defensive side, Matt Roy, to add in with what they did last year with Jacob Chikrin. It is possible this team got better from what they did, but the real question is just, can they keep that pace? The offensive success they had last year. Owen, you're on the side of yes, and you have big expectations coming up for the Capitals.
Yeah, and I think they've got a good blend, as they've had the last couple of years of older proven guys like Ovechkin, John Carlson, guys that can really set the tone and be leaders, but also these young guys coming through who have done really well with their sample size. And you mentioned a couple the Wave and Ryan Leonard coming up. There was another guy who really impressed me, who didn't end up playing in the playoffs. But just had pockets of really good play in the regular season. Ethan Frank, he did really good job in the AHL fastest skater competition with the Hershey Bears, and so he's a guy that I think it will take a big leap in year two. And just the job, and maybe there's a little bit of bias in saying this, having been in the system the last years, but the job that the Caps have done in getting their prospects really good experience with a Hershey Bears team that won back-to-back Calder Cups, and able to have a lot of those guys come in. Ethan Frank comes to mind. You mentioned Alexei Protas and Connor McMichael's another guy. Both those guys won Calder Cups, that first Calder Cup in Hershey, the first of the back-to-back. So they have a lot of guys that have learned what it's like to have your body go through a long playoff run and a whole season, and those guys have come in. Hendrix Lapierre is another guy who got sent down to Hershey middle of last season, but he's a guy that could still find his way. He's a Calder Cup playoffs MVP. So I'm really high on the young talent they have, especially up front. And then you mentioned the additions on the back end that they made. Also, look, Carolina was the better team in the 5 games last playoffs, but the Caps, they didn't have the best luck with injuries. I think, losing a guy like Faravari, another young, good defenseman that played big minutes for them, was a big shot blocker, getting him back for next season. I just really am high on this young talent and what they can bring. And you heard it from Mike too, like, people were surprised, but then they're like, I don't know if they're going to sustain this. Like, they're gonna drop off. And then you mentioned they did a little bit like towards the end of the regular season, but they had built such a cushion on everybody else that in terms of where they finished in the regular season, they were fine. So I am interested to see, if they follow that up, because it's hard to do that season after season, and they might not have the drive to want to finish the top of the division. They might just say, okay, yeah, we finish in the top three, and you just get in, and then you go from there. But I think that with the depth in particular, that will suit them well for a good long regular season run. Not to mention the goalie tandem of Logan Thompson and Charlie Lindgren and how elite that is. And I think like Logan Thompson definitely, had to be super fired up and motivated. I mean, they had no guys playing in the Four Nations last year. Like this team has been underestimated, and they have been proving doubters wrong a lot. And I was really impressed with the job they did against Montreal in the first round of the playoffs also. So I just think this is a team that's going to have a big chip on their shoulder. There's all the speculation on OV2 and will this be his last year and stuff. So they are going to be a fascinating team to watch.
Is it his last year?
Well, you're really putting me on the spot here. I don't think so. I think he'll and I might be in the minority there because I think there are a lot of people that think that he's going to he'll want to go back and experience playing in Russia. But I don't know. We'll see. I I could see it. I think he'll get like a 2-year deal or something. I think as long as his team is competitive, which they're obviously fully in their window, I have a hard time, and this is just me. I have a hard time seeing him walking away while the team is this competitive. What do you
And
think?
I have the opposite view. I would say that the window closed last year with that loss to the Hurricanes. I do love the defensive side, and I agree with you. The goaltending tandem is A1 elite tier. I love the combos. You've got Chikrin, Carlson, Sandin, Roy, Faravari, Van Riemsdyk. That's perfect for a defensive structure. I just don't think the offense is going to do what it did last year. I think the top six takes a big step back in the production we saw, and I do not think this bottom six is good enough with Ryan Leonard, who really did nothing after he came in. And granted, you got to give him some slack that a lot of that was around the great chase, and the empty net goal was great and all, but and he had to play in the playoffs to start his career. It'll be a little easier than that. I think you're going to see growing pains there. They need Hendrix Lapierre to be a big piece. Justin Sordiff on the fourth line. I don't think those are names that are going to drag you to the success we saw last year. And if you're gonna ride the wave here, are you saying that you see offensive production at the same level, or do you think that they're gonna grind it out and be a 2-1 1-0 game winning team to get to that mark?
I think it's to be, yeah. I guess I'm meeting you in the middle a little bit here. Well, I think, yeah, I think they are going to win more of those 3-1, 4-2 lower scoring type games than the run and gun 6-3 that, track meets that they found themselves in a couple of times last year. Because to your point, I do think there might be a little bit of a drop off in terms of the goal scoring, especially, with the great chase, no longer being the thing. I think, but they are so well coached and disciplined. And I think the goaltending too. Like it just, I have the confidence that they are going to be able to bear down. But we will see. I think that the Metro, um, it's also, I don't think it's as much of a gauntlet as the Atlantic. So I do think that, I mean, the top teams like the Canes and the Devils, and certainly we're going to get into the Devils and the Rangers and stuff. But I think the Caps are going to be able to manage their Metro schedule pretty well. And then, they'll get some tough matchups here and there against the Atlantic, but I think good teams find a way to win, right? So we will see.
Big news this week as we close off the Capitals. New jerseys. The Screaming Eagle has been revitalized. That might be up there for the top jersey of the year.
Yeah, it is. They're so sweet. But I love the black ones too. So it's like it's just like pick your point. They're both the logo's the best. I do like the red ones a little bit better than the black, which is like it's I kind of thought for a while that black Screaming Eagle jersey was like my favorite third jersey in hockey, and now the red, yeah, I just love it. There are a few other third jerseys that I like the well, the Sharks had those like stealth jerseys that were pretty cool. Um, Trying to think of other. Well, the Red Wings, they came out with a sweet jersey too the other day. But yeah, in terms of jerseys I've seen in a while, those Screaming Eagle Reds are pretty sweet.
I'm a big fan of them. The red, white, and blue is a sweet combination, and USA in the capital there, repping the colors. I love the tree. I think I 100% like the red over the black, even though the black's got the history and whatever. But those jerseys are unbelievable. The New Jersey Devils are making a lot of noise, and it comes maybe not in the way of the success that they sneaky had in this offseason, but the question marks around Vancouver captain Quinn Hughes and where the three brothers are going to unite. Is it New Jersey? It sounds like Luke Hughes is looking for a very short term bridge deal and to match up with Jack Hughes. There's been rumors about Detroit and all those guys hitting UFA the same year. Do you see the three Hughes brothers? Is it going to be Quinn to New Jersey, or are all three of the Hughes walking on this Devils team?
Man, I mean, it's so hard to imagine that, but like crazier things have happened. Although I think three brothers teaming up in Detroit would be pretty wild. But I think they get something done. But it's just a matter of how long it's going to be. I do think I wouldn't be surprised to see it be like a small two year thing where the Devils. I mean, Mike talked about it too. With their thing is they just got to stay healthy and they got to have their big guns be healthy at the right time. I do like some of the young pieces. Like Nemec, I thought really played better and better as the season went on, and he had that big double OT goal in playoffs. For them, I just think it's staying healthy and it's maybe the depth I think that you have with the Canes and the Caps. There's the Devils are not. I don't think they're quite as deep right now, but their star power is I'd put that up against a lot of the teams in the Metro and would bet on the Devils every single time. So um, it's it'll be really interesting to see which Devils team shows up this coming season.
Well, they had all the expectation going into last year, and as you mentioned, injuries were the problem. Jack Hughes misses the whole finish to the year. Dougie Hamilton out. Luke Hughes was in and out of the lineup as well, among a much longer list of names that were banged up. But Jacob Markstrom, the big piece from two off seasons ago, they keep that tandem intact, re-signing Jake Allen 5 years, and that's going to bring him over the age of 40 whenever he decides he wants to retire. But they go out and add depth as well. Evgeny Dodonov and Connor Brown, a fourth line guy that I think is going to be a big piece. They could move him up and down in that third, fourth line role. I think the top six talent this team has is plenty to get them going if they can get a little bit of defensive presence. It's just those questions. If you lose a guy like a Dougie Hamilton, a guy like Brett Pesce who was hurt, there's really not much behind him. Luke Hughes is still developing and has had his growing struggles. But behind that, a young Simone Nemec that needs to make a big step. Jonas Siegenthaler on the third pairing wasn't exceptional last year, and they need Markstrom to be that guy. So, I think unanimously last year, everybody on this show had the Devs number one, and it seems like that's changed a little bit. You've got them a little lower in your rankings. We'll get to the rankings, so I guess I won't spoil that piece. But um, it's not unreasonable to see this team on either side of winning the division or being kind of right on that playoff cusp again, where they were last year, just sneaking their way in over the Blue Jackets by a game.
Yeah, it's you summed it up there with just I think you look at the last 2 years, it's like it's just a matter of which Devils team's going to show up. I mean, yeah, the one that missed the playoffs 2 years ago, the one that kind of came in and was playing really really well for the majority of the regular season until the injury bug kind of just hit him. So I think uh, it just staying healthy, the X factor, like we've talked about. But I have them in the top three in the Metro. I'll say that, but we'll get into that later. What are we next? We're going to the Rangers. You said, or is that the team we're getting into here?
Yeah, we can go Rangers. I was going to go Columbus just since it rolled off the tongue there, but we'll go to the New York Rangers. And big news in New York that came out earlier yesterday as this podcast comes out. A new captain, JT Miller, the 29th captain in franchise history, replacing now Anaheim Duck Jacob Trouba. So kind of signing his name to be the next one getting the boot and sayonara maybe 3, 4, 5 years down the line. Your thoughts on Miller in that center role and really taking on a leadership piece here in the Rangers lineup?
Oh, I love it for them. I do think that you know, he knows all about the culture of that team, and has been on playoff runs with them too. So he can bring that familiarity to the organization. And he seemed to fit in well, coming back in the middle of this season, had some success. So I like it from just a familiar face in that locker room. I do think that as a whole, that Rangers team is obviously trying to turn things around after the way that I mean, I don't think anybody expected them to miss the playoffs after winning the President's Trophy. It was really surprising to see what happened there. So they have a lot of changes to work through, but I think getting a proven player that's had success in that market and with that team and just all I think there's a good amount of pressure that comes from playing with the New York Rangers, original six franchise in NYC, and just I mean JT Miller has known how to deal with that. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think can the young talent come that's on that team hold up, and it's a good balance between youth and experience there, and getting a veteran coach like Mike Sullivan will certainly also be interesting to see how he does. A lot of Sullivan's pals from Boston University are going to be with him there too. So with Dave Quinn and John Hines, so all of them were with the '09 national championship team. So that'll be or no, sorry, Dave Quinn and Mike Sullivan together. That'll be good to follow.
Off BU Terriers plug there. They're going to need that youth development pretty quick. And you look at this bottom six, I think could be a nightmare for the New York Rangers and their fan base that are just absolute savages when it comes to losing streaks. Perreault is going to have to become a man pretty quickly. In the bottom six, Perreault, Parsonen, Brodzinski, Edstrom, Carrick, Radish. None of those names are proven NHLers. When you think of third, fourth line caliber, like grinded out guys, this is going to be some guys trying to use skill, some guys that are trying to make a name for themselves. Matt Rempe not on that list, and I think when I look at the defense, it maybe gets even worse. Gavrikov is the big ad they go out and get in this offseason. It's Gavrikov and Adam Fox on the top line. Fox really needs to improve, and especially on the defensive end, a lot of gaps got exposed last year. And especially in the Four Nations, I think maybe it being an Olympic year helps him trying to make that team, trying to prove himself again. But when you go down the list here, Carson Soucy, Will Borgen, Urho Vakanainen, rookie, and Braden Schneider are the remaining D pairs. Anywhere in that, Owen, are you seeing life for this Rangers team to turn it around? Or is it time to go full rebuild? Kaprizov's name being thrown around after he's declined to extend in Minnesota. I think they're closer to selling every single asset in the Panarin Trocheck. Eventually, it's going to be JT Miller, the new captain phase.
And yeah, you certainly doesn't seem like you have the most optimistic view. But I think neither do I with just kind of the guys you mentioned there. I don't see them being the team that leads this, or the guys that lead this team to promising playoff performance. So they very well might need to clean house soon. We shall see.
And they're right up against the cap as well, just $777,000 available for the New York Rangers last year and 85 points last season. And I guess that's maybe better than it could have been, thinking back to the losing streak of December and Christmas, January, where Rangers fans were throwing in the towel and ready to give up the next decade of trying to rebuild forward. But maybe some hope there. We will see when we get to our rankings. The Columbus Blue Jackets were the team on top of the Rangers, just missing out by a game to the Devils. But an unbelievable season when you put all things in perspective, with the Gaudreau tragedy and having to overcome that, back-to-back seasons that the Blue Jackets have lost a teammate to, which is just unfathomable of what those guys have had to go through. But they rallied, made a heck of a run at a chance at the playoffs, and they've got a ton of youth that just is still coming, maybe back to health when you think of Boone Jenner, who missed about the whole season, Sean Monahan, who was out for quite a bit, and the big move recently going out to try to shore up the goaltending options. Jet Greaves expected to be up there with Merzlikins and the future of maybe the crease in Columbus. We saw shines of greatness towards the end of last year, but they also go in and trade with Philly. They pick up Ivan Fedotov, the big 6 foot plus. I want to say 6'7", 6'8" inside the crease on Fedotov, the rookie Russian from last year, who's going to start in the AHL, but a backup option if you need it, if injuries come. And this Blue Jackets team is, fairly shored up. They've got a strong decor led by Zach Werenski. I think I would say, solid bottom six compared to the Rangers. Add Miles Wood out of the Devils lineup, and they've got scoring top to bottom in the top six. That's got Jenner, if he can stay healthy, and Monahan mixed with Marchenko, Voronkov, Fantilli, and Kent Johnson, who have all shown their shines. You've got Cole Sillinger listed currently on the third line, but he's a top six caliber player. Igor Chinnikov has been in and out of there. I love the Columbus Blue Jackets this year.
Yeah, they've got some fun players to watch, especially guys under 23 too, that are young and exciting. And I think like Fantilli has been more and more fun to watch. Marchenko, another guy you mentioned. Just really, really exciting young players. Like, well, seeing what Kent Johnson does. There's a good Michigan Blue Jackets connection, which is kind of funny to think about, with, just the Michigan Ohio State rivalry across the board, and all these new Michigan hockey players that are going to Columbus and playing well. Werenski being a main one. But they're turning the corner, like you mentioned. And I think just in net, that's the biggest sort of area where, okay, can Jet Greaves, I think he's shown a lot of talent and promise, but what's he gonna play like in a larger body of work at the NHL level? Each season, the majority of his time has been spent down in the American League, but I think, is he ready to go in and make that jump, splitting games with Merzlikins? It's all about, like we've talked about, just a common theme in this broadcast is you got to have two goalies, not just one necessarily, to be good and to keep pace with everybody. So they're going to need both Greaves and Merzlikins to be on their game to go on a run.
Depth piece adds. They get Charlie Coyle out of Colorado, and will try to make that push. They were so close last year. We'll see if they can continue to up it. The New York Islanders are a team that's in a weird spot right now, and looked like full rebuild. All of a sudden, go from 0.1% chance to win the lottery and get the number 1 overall pick. Now, Matthew Schaefer, the future of this Islanders program. Do you see him making a jump this year and being a piece of this Islanders squad?
I think so. I think, they want to get the young talent in there and involved and give the fans something to be a little excited about. And I think that's something Matthew Darsh has been, I don't know if you saw the video or I don't know if it was, I saw it in an article, but I think there was a video too that they kind of teased it with about how the Islanders were trying to get Higgins too. They were trying to trade for that pick. I don't know if you saw it, but so it just, I really do think they're trying to get more young talent in there and get them big minutes. So I do think um, Schaefer is going to be a big part of the plans this year and just getting him ice time because like we've talked about, there are quite a few teams in the Metro that are ahead of where the Islanders are right now. But I think if you can get Schaefer, who's going to be a centerpiece for this franchise for a while, if you get him involved, getting some game time, just some of the other younger pieces that they have, getting them up to speed with everything. They're not a playoff team. I'd be shocked if they're in the mix, but I do think that the future is getting brighter, especially with the lottery luck that they had.
This team could be a nightmare this year, and their top line, big pickup Jonathan Drouin, but that's going to need to come with Bo Horvat, who's going to have all kinds of work trying to boost this line, and Maxim Shabanov on the top line right wing. Anders Lee, Matthew Barzell, Kyle Palmieri. That's a solid second line. And then you've got question marks and maybe some age problems on the bottom half. JG Pajot with Anthony Duclair, who was brutal for them last year, was slow, was on a mental health break because he was getting so much kickback from Lou Lamoriello. He's back in the lineup. Casey Cizikas playing on the fourth line, and they're going to need some boost. But I think this could be a team fighting with the Penguins for the Gavin McKenna back-to-back number ones. I'm not sure if you feel the same. I may be better than that. I think the Penguins are in a different state of brutal. I think this is a team that's going to be meddling towards the bottom, maybe not contending to the level that they did last year, where they picked up 82 points. I think low 70s is a fair spot to put the Islanders this year.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about different state of brutal. I do think the Philadelphia Flyers are going to be like that was. I will tell us right now, like if they are not in the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes, like I think Philly hockey fans are gonna start rioting and going like they want that. They want to like I think you gotta you gotta start blowing. I mean, I know they got talking. He's a good coach and stuff, but like they are just they need help. They need that star power to come in. So I think as we're talking about, Metro Division teams getting towards the bottom, they're definitely a team that's going to be in the McKenna sweepstakes. You talk about the Penguins too. They're going to be bad, but as long as you have Sidney Crosby on your team and he did his part to quiet the trade speculation today, or at least say that, he really wants to spend the rest of his career in Pittsburgh. He says that, but people keep writing about it, talking about it. We'll see what happens there. But I do think as long as he is on that team, it's hard for me to put them in the McKenna sweepstakes. But I don't know. I like. Do you say that thinking that the Penguins are gonna maybe trade Crosby during the year, or you just think even with him,
I
like
don't I don't think they trade him this year. No, I do think they trade him, and I think it's next summer. I think Malkin's retiring. I think he's gonna ride it out with his guy, and I do think they're gonna move. I also think it depends on the McKenna sweepstakes. I wonder if they get lucky in the lottery and maybe a little shimmy shake on the back side of that. But I think if they get McKenna, he stays. If they don't get McKenna, he's a Montreal Canadian, and they're going to be lethal maybe a Colorado Avalanche. They just don't have the cap for it. But I do think he's on the move. I disagree completely on the Philadelphia Flyers side. And I'm also looking at the standings from last year. It is unbelievable that in the East, only 3 teams in the entire conference were under 80 points, and that includes the Sabres at 79 and the 2 worst teams in the Flyers and the Bruins at 76 points. I think it's going to be completely different. I think the West is going to be a lot stronger this year, and I think it's going to be an absolute gong show at the bottom of the East on the McKenna sweepstakes. But the Flyers are not on that list for me. They go out and they add Trevor Zegras. They get the coaching change in Tocchet coming in. We saw that Torts bump when he took over. I think it's the exact same thing with a guy who's a lot better at crafting young players, and that's exactly what this team has. Michkov is going to be throwing in weekly Michigans, and maybe he's going to be throwing it like between the legs, swirl the stick right to Zegras and some sort of extra flash on a new move that is unnamed right now. But I think this offense has the potential to be something special. And thinking of what Tocchet did in Vancouver 2 years ago when he took over there, it could be the exact same thing. I think they're right up there in my thoughts with Columbus. They've made the right moves, getting rid of some guys that didn't want to be there, and made some changes with personnel that I think set them up. I don't think they're a playoff team, but to be better than they have been here. I don't think they're in the McKenna sweepstakes for me.
Interesting. I mean, they do have some like. I think Zegras still has a lot to prove. I mean, he had his highlight.
He's another guy. He's got to stay healthy too.
Yeah, he's got to stay healthy. He's got to show that he's more than just kind of a. Well, I don't know. Maybe this is just the inner torts in me, but I think he's gonna produce when these games are getting meaningful, and they're. I mean, we neither of us see them as a playoff team, but just keeping them in the hunt. Like he's a guy that top 10 draft pick went for the Ducks. Like he's supposed to be a guy that can make or break certain games, and I just think he hasn't panned out the way that I think a lot of people probably thought he was gonna when he was lighting it up in the World Juniors, and he'd come off a really good first season of college and then signed with the Ducks, and then there were all these Michigan videos and things like that and when he was starting out, and then he just obviously, you mentioned the health hasn't quite panned out. Maybe the change of scenery will do something for him. But I do think that they're just a handful of, we'll see. There are a handful of younger guys on this team that just still have quite a bit to prove. Michikov, he's probably one of the few guys that I'm like, okay, if I'm a Flyers fan, like that's who I'm really optimistic about. But we'll see how this team holds up. I got them. Well, we can get into our rankings and where I have them finishing, but it's yeah.
And we got one more team to get through before we throw those out. A team that's just stacking up draft capital in the second round and third rounds. 3 second rounders in 2026 with 2/3, 2 seconds and 3/3 in 27, 2 seconds and 2/3 in 2028. That's what the Pittsburgh Penguins are looking at before trading Malkin and Crosby. And I think the top line is the only thing about this team that has any life. And if it's going to be, I think Sidney Crosby could be the reason they sell on the McKenna sweepstakes, is just because he refuses to lose and they're going to be too good to get McKenna. I don't think that's possible. This team is going to be bad. Raquel Crosby Rust, that's a line I like, I think has life. And I think Malkin is just set up to fail brutally with Ville Koivunen and Anthony Mantha on his wings, and it just continues to get worse. The locker room cancer that Rutger McGroarty has shown to be in his first year of being a pro, and even before that when he was in college. Novak, Tomasino, Dewar, Blake Lizotte, Justin Brazeau is your bottom 6 for the Pittsburgh Penguins. You have Erik Karlsson and whatever's left of him that has not been much or anything on the defensive end. Ryan Shea as his left point partner, Chris Letang and Connor Clifton, Owen Pickering, and the trade for Matt Dumba. And I think it's more likely than not that Malkin is the start of the trades as the Penguins go full tank here. Still $13.5 million as they're scraping at the cap floor, and they can still get rid of Malkin and Crosby in that time.
God, man, just looking at this lineup, I think I'm rethinking my bottom 3, which is like it's hard because like Crosby is playing at such a high level still, and you like it's hard to count out a team, but he has like nothing around him. Like I mean, Raquel and Roster, they're still decent, but after that, like you said, I mean, this bottom 6 is a nightmare. It's horrific. It's well, no disrespect to these guys, but it's just yeah, I think that and then you look at the back end and it is not pretty at all. Like I don't know why the Penguins I know why they brought in Erik Karlsson and decided to, try to go all in and push their chips in the middle of the table, but I think San Jose was probably dying to just offload as much of that contract as they possibly could. And the Penguins took 10 million of it AAV. It just, I don't know. It's not aging well for them. That trade certainly isn't. So especially with like how well Granlund ended up playing in San Jose and then going to Dallas. So it's they've got their work cut out for them in terms of getting back to contention. But yeah, I might be shuffling the Penguins towards the bottom, which is, I mean, they were in the bottom 3, but looking at that lineup, I might be doing some changing on the fly here to my order. But
And outside of a dash 105 San Jose Sharks, dash 70 Chicago Blackhawks, and a surprise minus 60 from the Nashville Predators, the Penguins were next to the bottom of the league, dash 50 last year, and they just got older. They did not go out and make any game-breaking changes and have been described as the team that is embracing the tank for Gavin McKenna. Time for our rankings here. And you and I have some severe differences.
Oh.
And I've even changed a few of them as I've sat here and thought about it. But it does not agree with what you're going to say. Do we want to start let's start at the bottom and work our way up because I think we're going to be close to agreeing on who the bottom is.
Yep. Well, okay. The Pittsburgh Penguins are at the very bottom now after looking at that lineup, and like I just it's hard to do that with Sidney Crosby and everything, and just out of the respect I had for him, I initially didn't have them that far down, but I just think the supporting cast for this team is not there. So I have the Pittsburgh Penguins at the bottom.
It's the Penguins at the bottom, and they are accompanied by the New York Islanders down there as the second worst team. And that's where we have our first significant difference. And your face says it all there, Owen. A little bit of surprise.
Yeah, I not too high on the Philadelphia Flyers, and I think Rick Tocchet certainly is he's proven to have helped teams turn around, but maybe it's just the fact. I think part of me, it's what's shaping this opinion is that every Flyers fan I know is just um, always in a pretty pessimistic state about their team. And it just it's been a while. It's been a long kind of turnaround period for them. And I think maybe they'll take some steps forward, some signs of growth, but overall, I know you're a little bit higher on some of their stars than I am, but I have them towards the basement, the two Pennsylvania.
Philly is not among my bottom 3. And after originally this was not the case. After discussing the New York Rangers are my number 6 team in
What?
the Atlantic Division.
You are like flip flop. You had them in your okay. Well, what inspired the change of heart? Because you had them making the playoffs like 30 minutes ago.
I was originally thinking about progression rather than regression. Last year, 85 points. I think they are dropping from that mark, and I've raised on Philly. I was not considering my thoughts on the Rick Tocchet Philadelphia Flyers. I think we're going to see the Penguins somewhere in the high 60s range for points. The Islanders in the low to mid 70s, and the Rangers barreling in at 78 points. They are going to be the number 6 team. The bottom 6 is not good enough. The defense is vicious. And I think Igor Shesterkin is going to be in one just because you can be the best goaltender in the world. Shots are going to be coming from all kinds of different angles playing with that AHL defense in front of him.
I mean, they're not a playoff team, so I don't disagree with a lot of your logic. But okay, Rangers at 6. So who do we have at 5 for you?
You got to give yours first. Who's your
Okay.
6? Or yours
Okay.
was the Islanders. You said your bottom 3 was pretty clear. For
Yeah.
me, coming in the 5 spot is Philly. I think Philly's going to just barely edge them out. They're going to be better than last year. Not quite a playoff team or even a playoff contender, but I think they up from last place in the division at 76. I think they get a little bit better. They edge out the Rangers by a game or two, and they're going to come in 80 to 82 points this year.
Okay. Yeah, think they're not a playoff team. I guess I have them a little um, farther than you, but I think we've got some more disagreement, and it starts with who we have at 4. And look, I mean, this team could I like. I'm not saying this disrespectfully. Like I do think that they can push for a wild card. I think we are in agreement that the 2 wild card teams are most likely going to be from the Atlantic. Although I think there's a chance you could get 4 from the Metro. We'll see. But we don't, our top 4 are a little different, and our number 1 is very different. But you're a little bit higher on the Columbus Blue Jackets than I am. I have been impressed with what they did, and I'm certainly impressed with the year that they had last year. I just don't think it's enough to challenge the 3 top dogs. I think it's a lot of younger players that are certainly taking steps and making great strides, but I think the 3 teams that I have above them have all have more established players that have been proven to help their team get to the playoffs.
So for me, it's the Blue Jackets making the playoffs. They had 89 last year, and kind of a historic run. I think they're going to be right in that same range of the 88 to 92 points. And I just think the Metro is a lot weaker than it was before. And I think that that's going to be the difference maker that gets them in. And they're going to be fighting it out with a team that is my Boston Bruins of this year. Maybe not to that level of dropping from a couple seasons ago, breaking the President's Trophy record of 135 points and last year finishing with 76. But the 111 point Washington Capitals are not cracking 90 points this year. They are going to lose out. That's my number 4 team. And the Capitals missed the playoffs for me this year. I just think that it's going to be impossible for them to keep the run they had. I think Ovi pushed a lot of that, just the magic and the miracle that went on around his broken femur or broken leg, whatever it was, and coming back on some Russian gas, pushing the pace and scoring way too many goals. I think he's going to slow down a little bit, kind of what we saw 2 years ago. And the Capitals are going to struggle here, maybe imposing the rebuild that was supposed to be happening last year. It's going to happen this year. The Caps miss the Blue Jackets are in. Top 3 time. Where'd you put the Caps? You got we now that we're into our top 3. This
Okay,
is
yeah,
this is
I
the
have
the big difference maker.
yes, no, it is very different because I have them defending their title as Metropolitan Division champions. I have them running it back. I think that, your criticisms of them be not being enough up front are, I think that Ryan Leonard is going to prove you wrong. I do think that he's going to, with a full season of, and believe me, as somebody who has never been a fan of Boston college hockey, it is not, I don't enjoy seeing a BC player's praises, but I do think that Ryan Leonard has what it takes to be a goal scorer at the NHL level. And, there will be growing pains, like you mentioned, but I just am a believer in Carver getting the most out of his guys and what that goaltending tandem does. I think that they proved, as I said, they proved a lot of doubters wrong last season, and my expectation is that they will continue their strong regular season play into next season. Playoffs might be a different story, but I do have the Caps running it back. And then I have the Canes and the Devils in the same spots that they finished in last year at 2 and 3. And the Canes very well could, roll through that or not roll through, even though they kind of did that last year. But the Canes could very well repeat as the team that emerges out of the Metro in the playoffs. But I do see the Caps finishing ahead in the regular season. So that's my 1, 2, 3. What do we got for you?
Outside of the Capitals, we agree on the next 2, and for me, it's the Carolina Hurricanes that are going to absolutely roll this division. I think a clear number 1, and I look back to 2 seasons ago, it was the Rangers that won the President's Trophy, 114 points, and the Canes were scratching at their backs, 111 points right there. A little bit of regression last year, and that was the season that was kind of thought of as the rebuild, like we talked with Mike about, and they survived the rebuild and beyond that to make the Eastern Conference final. I think they only got way better in the offseason here. This is a team I have winning the President's Trophy this year, and the Carolina Hurricanes, I think, are a 116-point team. I think they're better than that 111-point team from a couple years ago. And on top of that, I think are in a much weaker division here. I don't really have confidence in anybody outside of the Carolina Hurricanes and the Devils pending health. If the Devils stay healthy, I think they are easily a 100-point team with Markstrom, if he can, play well enough and with the offensive power. The trouble is you lose a guy like Dougie Hamilton who's injury prone. You lose a guy like Jack Hughes. I could easily see that flip coming where the Caps are my next team in there, and the Devs could struggle and be that first team out. But for me, it's the top 3: Canes, Devils, Blue Jackets, and I think I would teeter on the Capitals being that next team in. But I think the real surprise for me would be the Rangers being a bottom feeder. I it's and I think it's again recency biased. It's hard to think of that team from a couple years ago that won the President's Trophy having to rebuild right now. And the more I think about it, the more I believe that the Rangers are going to be closer to the McKenna sweepstakes than they are the playoffs here. But I think the Hurricanes are going to be dominant. The 106.5 line is where DraftKings has them at. And I think they smash that. I think this is the year the Canes win the President's Trophy.
Well, interesting that I think also you mentioned the Rangers slide there from President's Trophy to kind of the outside of the playoff picture, and it seems like you've got the Caps doing that this coming season. So will be interesting to see how that all plays out. Can they sustain their success? I know when Colin Kapoor hears this, he will probably have his words about he has never lost his Caps fandom, so I know where he probably has some finishing, but we'll see.
Well, and a perfect time to give some snaps to Colin Kapoor because last year he was the only guy on this show that had any faith in the Washington Capitals being a good team. And after that offseason, they went out and had, I believe he picked them to be the number one team in the Metro. So certainly some snaps to be given there. I don't think it's this year. I think it's back to missing the playoffs for the Caps. We'll wait and see. It's always fun to look back on how it went from the year before, and we will have to see for sure. But oh, and as we wrap it up here, you're probably a much different scenery right now as we hit September 15th than I am, with about 3 months of summer still to go in North Carolina. The fall season is upon us. Hibernation is coming, and you can't seem to stay away from bears.
I almost forgot that we were gonna we were gonna be getting into this. But indeed the case. For those of you who, remember one of the last episodes, I was out in Colorado. I saw a sign that basically detailed what to do when you come across a bear, and there were the obvious ones like don't bother the cubs, don't feed it, but also at the bottom, and there were some all caps in the wording here, but it said to fight back when attacked. So, and I think that's the natural instinct, right? But it was certainly an eye-opening thing to see on a sign in downtown Colorado, no less. But here in Vermont, it is still bear country. I haven't seen a live bear sighting, although I have seen some raccoons, and they're a little feisty. So, and I don't want to find myself too close to the wildlife. But I was going on a hike and was over a beautiful town of Stowe, just doing a hike, and right by the old gondola, there was a sign that detailed. Let me read the list. It was very similar, just didn't have the whole fight back when attacked guideline, which was so the people got to know, but it was be bear aware. Make noise as you go. Do not wear headphones. Keep children close to you. Watch for bear signs. Never approach or feed a bear, and keep your dog on a leash. So all pretty similar guidelines, but I do think you got to let the people know that if you get attacked, fight back. It's just a black bear. It's not a grizzly bear. Grizzly bear, I mean, at that point, you might as well not even write that, because if it's a grizzly bear, it's game over. But if it's a black bear, you know, put up a fight, fight back. I like that instruction. I support that. They only eat plants, so I mean, sure, they got the big claws and they might throw a couple punches, but fight back. That's my message.
That's our weekly nature advice from Owen Gund and bear updates. Good to know. If you're out west, Colorado or the Rocky Mountains, fight back when attacked. And if you're out east, apparently just make some noise and be a docile friend who does not have food attached.
Yeah.
Owen, great work as always here, buddy. 39 episodes down, and it's pretty crazy to think that hockey is somewhat here in the form of preseason, but regular season hockey just around the corner. I hope you're prepping your draft strategy, your first year upcoming in the Fifth
Yeah.
Liners Fantasy Hockey League, and my reign of terror is ready to begin.
Well, I'm starting my own little arena. I had the strong showing in the trivia, and I'm looking forward to trying to keep that momentum rolling. Excited to get going with everybody, and I know we've been doing a lot of these interviews, just you and I, but excited to catch up with the rest of the crew as well. And I know fantasy hockey always has some good banner attached to it, so excited for all the smack talk that'll come with it.
Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Fifth Liners Pod. We're on Spotify and YouTube. Like, follow, comment, all that helps boost the show here as we continue to bring on top-level NHL guests, and we've got an even bigger line coming in the month of October that we're excited to roll out here as we continue to roll on and into the NHL hockey season. Atlantic Division next week, and then it is draft week 2 weeks from now. Mark your calendar. The fantasy hockey draft special is coming your way. This has been another episode, the Fifth Liners Hockey Podcast for Owen Gund. I'm Casey Ditzel. Until next time, have a good one, everybody.